Hey all, this is Cheyenne again. I've got Mo with me. Mo is one of our lead software developers at Blue Squad. As promised, we wanted to talk about the Iowa Caucus App. Obviously, this topic is really interesting to us. For those of you who haven't heard, there were some serious technical difficulties during the Iowa caucuses with an app they were using to count votes. This is very interesting to us, of course, because we have an app, and any sort of political ramifications that happen with technology are super important to what we're trying to do as a company. And we wanted to just give our perspective on what happened and hopefully educate y'all on what happened as well. So yeah, let's get started. So quick introduction. Like I said, Mo is one of our lead software developers. He's actually in Pakistan right now, hoping to come join us back in the US pretty soon. Immigration affects us all. So he's on the Zoom call right now. So hey, say hello, Mo.
Hey guys.
What's up?
So during the Iowa caucus, as we explained in our last video, there's a whole process where you have to count votes at every different precinct and see who's leading each precinct and which candidates are viable and that sort of thing. So there's about, I think, 1,600 precincts in Iowa. They had to count each one, and to do that they were actually trying to use this one-off app that was built specifically for that process. That app was built by a company called Shadow, which, given this what happened, not a great name. But basically, Shadow's been trying to build some really cool technology. They were contracted by the Iowa Democratic Party to build an app for their caucus process. Unfortunately, what happened was the app broke for a few different reasons we'll get into. The precinct captains were not able to report through the app. The data was not getting to the Iowa Democratic Party. They found inconsistencies in what they were seeing in the app versus what other reports they were getting. And so they had to kind of sort of call time on that. And then on top of that, once everyone said to not use the app, they all started calling to this hotline. So you got thousands of people calling to the same hotline. That's not great either. And so that's why the Iowa results were so delayed, and I think even today, they still don't have 100% of the results yet. So we wanted to go into kind of why this happened, so you understand some of the challenges, not just working with technology, but specifically working with technology in politics and what that means. So the first thing I want to talk about is how this app got into the hands of all the precinct captains. So what I've read is that maybe around half to, let's say, 3/4 of the precinct captains actually had the app in hand on their phone prior to caucus day. So I think they had approximately 2 weeks to get it, and Shadow had sent out quite a few email reminders for people to download it. But there was a process where I think they had to get this, basically what's called like a test suite. So when you're developing an app, you don't always want to release it to people in the public right away. So you have this sort of test delivery system to get that. And so they were using that to distribute the app, I believe. Mo, can you talk more about how that process works and kind of what the implications there in this context?
Yeah, I guess for iPhone specifically or iOS specifically, they have alternate distribution methods for apps that are in test or in QA. That way you don't have to publish the app to the App Store. It's not available to the public. It allows you to, I guess, deliver an application to a subset of users who have to usually be handpicked, or it's sent out to a wider group of people. And yeah, it just allows you to, I guess, handpick the people you want to download the app versus everybody. And the implications, I mean, it's significantly easier to get the app in people's hands versus having to go through the review process that both Google and Apple have in place.
Are there going to be challenges when you're talking about distributing it to like 1,000+ people? Because at Blue Squad we use something similar, but we use it internally to test the app before we release. But they're releasing to like 1,000, 1,500 precinct captains.
The only difficulty I could imagine would be getting everybody to sign up for that distribution platform. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of them charge by the number of people you want to distribute the app to. So I imagine it was potentially expensive.
I think one of the things I saw happen, or at least read happen, was you had to download the test software first and then download the app through that. And using these test suites is not super intuitive, like they're meant for more technical users really, because you have to get like a device ID from each person's phone typically. You have to kind of authenticate that device with the platform or the administrator of the platform. So it's like a multi-step process, and we're talking about essentially volunteers everywhere from like Des Moines to rural Iowa. That's going to be a challenging process, right? So that was certainly working against them, I think.
Yeah, and you have to have everybody's device IDs and email addresses beforehand, typically.
This was really a one-off application. So what I mean by that, it was going to be used for this one purpose in this one event. I think there was also some potential it could have been used in Nevada that obviously is not happening now. But we're talking about one or two uses, and then the app is essentially done or shelved for maybe 4 years, right?
Things you might skip out on potentially when you're writing an app that's only going to be used once or twice is you're a little bit more lenient with error handling. You don't really dive into making sure you're handling exceptions correctly, or you're gracefully failing, or you're porting everything in the way that you should, specifically on the back end. And then on the front end, I think you can be a little bit more lax or lenient with the way in which you present a UI, especially if it's an app that's being used internally and it's not public per se.
One of the things that we as a company, as a group, as a collection of people that are trying to build good new technology for progressives is that, for me it's really important to say that the folks purchasing this technology need to be thinking longer term around what they're doing, right? Like a one-off app is going to be a short-term investment, and if we as progressives want to build an advantage, we have to invest in longer term projects so that the people developing them can have the right mentality going into the project and be like, this is a thing that's going to be used for potentially decades, right? What do we do for that to make it a really quality product? The way they went about setting up this project to develop the app was the Iowa Democratic Party sent out an RFP, request for proposal, to different companies. Like one of them was Microsoft, and then one of them was Shadow, and I think Shadow was actually the only one that actually responded to the RFP with an actual real full response, which is good on them. Like they are interested in helping Iowa do something interesting and new. The challenge though is that I think that RFP, or at least the contract, was sealed 2 months prior to the caucus itself. And if we're to believe some of the numbers being reported, the contract was for about $20,000. Mo, just tell us what that means when you're talking about a project of this importance or this scale, and you're working with 2 months and $20K.
It was just for Iowa, and it was going to be used for just one night. I honestly think the amount that was paid to deliver something like this was fair. And I feel like they had, given that they had, I believe, 5 developers on the team, right?
Yeah, so it was like one senior engineer and I think 4 or 5 junior engineers.
I believe that the amount of time allocated to deliver something like this was enough. Honestly, I feel like it would take about a month to develop something like this, and that would leave an additional month to QA.
So that's interesting though, because it seems clear that there wasn't enough QA time put into it. So what we're hearing is that the app itself was recording data correctly within itself, but it was only like partially reporting data out to the party, and they started to see inconsistencies. So when you hear something like that, we can only sort of theorize as to what that really means, but when you hear that, Mo, like what do you think is happening there?
So it sounds like
the data was coming in through the app from the people leading the caucus at the gymnasiums or wherever it was into their database is fine, and it was getting logged. However, they were trying to relay whatever information they were aggregating onto another service hosted by the Iowa Democratic Party, which and that portion was failing. However, I find that to be a little bit confusing in the sense that it took them so much longer to deliver the results of the caucus, because they should just still have that data logged or on their end. And in my opinion, it should have been much easier to get the results out to the public. I feel like there was potentially some issue with what they were recording themselves on their end, and they needed to go back and double check to make sure that whatever they over or under recorded was accounted for. Given that we're fortunate enough to work on something that we're so passionate about, kind of lends to us putting a significant amount of care and detail into even the smallest of things, and making sure that we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's multiple times, so we don't let people down or let this opportunity down, and essentially make the most of it.
So thanks everyone for listening. Hopefully that gave you some more insight into what it takes to build an app and what may have gone wrong in this one particular case in Iowa. We, of course, at Blue Squad are super committed to building really good technology for all of you, for our progressive family, and we hope that we're able to deliver that. So thanks again.